This is Knock, issue 3. It's a OSR supplement full of essays, adventures, character classes, random tables, and so on you can use in your old school game, and many you can actually use in any game. I've been putting off making this video because when I first went through this book, I thought, oh, this is not as good as issue 1 and 2. There's not that much stuff I like in here. But when I finally went around and went through it again, marking everything that I liked, it came out a lot. So I think my memory is playing a trick on me there, making me believe that there was more in issue 1 and 2 than in this. Or issues 1 and 2 are just so exceptional. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff to like in here, so let's get started. We start with the sleeve. The sleeve contains a complete adventure set in a desert with an old civilization monument, and that would fit right into any sword and sorcery style campaign. Like this a lot. And we've got the bookmark, die drop character backstory generator. So you can just take a number of d6 and drop them on here, and you get a backstory for your character. Neat little gadget here. So let's dig in. First entry I really like, Nightmare on Lake 13. It's an adaptation of old school rules for a slasher themed game, complete with your monster of the week, rules for fear, an army of minions. And just these 2 pages are enough to get going with your own Friday the 13th Halloween style game. Next bookmark. These 66 sites to stumble upon in the woods. This is just a number of random things you can find in the woodlands, and this would go well with a wilderness game like Into the Weird and Wild that I reviewed last week. So useful. Next bookmark. Fungus Among Us. A list of eatable, useful or notable fungi you might find in the woods, once again, would go well with a wilderness adventure. Next bookmark. It's not the beginning spellbooks, it's when all you have is a hammer. This starts out with an essay and a discussion about problem solving and what role items especially play in problem solving. Basically, it boils down to when all you have is a sword, every scene looks like a combat encounter. So this urges you to give your players items that are useful outside of combat, and then it gives you a D100 lists of such items ready for you to use. Very useful, also very useful mindset. An immovable rod or a 5-foot pole can be more useful in a dungeon than a flaming sword. Though a flaming sword is pretty useful. It's probably more useful than a sword +3. Next, it's not the Slayer's weapon, it's what to do now that your first level magic user has cast their one spell. You all have seen that mage players that just hang back and do nothing when they run out of spells. But there's a lot you can still do, and they give you a number of examples. Use hirelings. Use ranged weapons like the few you are proficient with. A dagger might not be doing that much damage, but every little bit helps. It's better than wasting your action. Use oil flasks, scrolls, bring equipment. Be a thoughtful player. You're playing an intelligent 16 mage, so use your problem-solving skills. Good mindset to have in general. The 7 draconic things. Now, that itself is not that interesting, but it begins a whole section about dragons and monsters in general. So this is a different take on dragons. Well, then we've got a section on playing dragons. Make them as devious and resourceful as dragons should be. Make them memorable, make them dangerous. And the idea is simple. Play them like the worst of your player characters. Especially if you've got a group of sociopathic murder hobos, that it's a great idea to hold up the mirror in the form of your monster. And then we've got humanizing the monsters. So instead of making them just something super alien for you to slay, give them some trait that makes them a bit more human. Greetings, Innkeep, what news around here? These are D12 adventure hooks you can pick up in a tavern. It's always useful. Dynamism and the generic optimum. This is an essay about having dynamic combat encounters. So something has to change during the encounter that messes up all the plans that the players have. And then they have to make haste, struggle, and improvise to somehow come out on top. And it gives you some examples to use. So this is a great way to spice up your combat encounters should you feel they are too boring. What are my rations? This is just a random table to spice up your run-of-the-mill common rations. So they might be aged blue cheese and thick crackers, maybe lemon and salt soaked chicken lap rack and leek leaves. This just adds flavor to your rations. D12 Sword Saint techniques. So these are special combat techniques that your fighter might pick up as a quest reward after a cool training montage. There are some really cool ones in here. But also, I like the mindset behind this. It's easy enough to reward the player of a wizard with scrolls and new spells, but we forget that fighters don't just want magic weapons and armors, and might appreciate something like this that makes their combat style more unique and makes them seem like a learned, skilled, professional fighter and not just the guy who swings around the magic sword. Abstract magic and concrete magic. This is an essay why many D&D spells are actually boring, at least to me. And it's mostly in the way the magic is presented. The example they give here is the pass wall spell. It lets you pass through a wall. But if you flesh it out some more, if you make it more concrete, then the spell can become the spell of the subterranean gullet, an invocation of the great chthonic god Maxilor. All subterranean cavities, tunnels, and pits are his mouth, throats, and visceral cavities. This spell, or perhaps prayer, compels Maxilor to open up such an opening in stone. The end of the spell, the passage closes. Whoever is still in there is lost, probably devoured by the god. So these two spells have practically the same effect, but the second one just has a lot more flavor. For me, that makes it more magical. And I will get into this more next week when I review the Book of Gulp, which does this and turns it up to 11. 10 questions you need to ask about your runes. This is a random rune generator, number of random tables, and this is what is missing in the One Ring rulebook, the One Ring core rulebooks, and also the runes of Eriador. So now this could be a supplement to play the One Ring. Useful. Play like it's 2022. This is an essay about using new school rules in your old school games. And I find that the rule sets I like most actually follow this philosophy. So we take from the old school what works, what we like, and we take from the new school what works and what we like. For example, something like inspiration from 5e. It's a great rule and you can easily drop that in your OSR. Or rolling with advantage and disadvantage. Such a simple, elegant rule with so many applications. I use those all the time. Less rules to do more. This is, I think, an essential essay about the old school spirit, mirroring many of my thoughts I voiced in my the fascination of the OSR video. That if you have less rules, the focus is more on the game world. It's more on the characters, it's more on the story and less on the rules. And you will find less solutions ready-made on your character sheet. It's not about the action economy. It's coming up with a clever plan. And my last bookmark, I'm skipping through a bit here. In the middle we've got some maps, and while these are nice maps, I don't really know what to do with them other than just getting a bit of inspiration, because to have a useful map, the format is just too small. Well, maps are not that useful to me. Then we've got the monster section. Number of different monsters, and the one I liked most was the Birch Maiden, which would fit very well in a game of the Word and Wild. Then we've got character classes, which I all didn't find that useful. Your mileage may vary. I've got an adventure here, Odious Uplands Imprint, which is themed about body horror and decay, I guess. Very well presented, but your mileage may vary. I didn't find these adventures especially. I didn't find these adventures especially inspiring, and especially this one, the Nexus of the IXX. This is just a very dry presentation, and to use this I constantly have to flip back to the map page. Yeah, even the back cover has a random table on it that is befitting the illustration, Mood the Monsters Law. So yeah, Knock issue 3. Once again, a thick book, very well put together, and there is a lot of loot in here. You can pilfer and put it into your own games. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.